Hi friends, it's Dana here. I know that most kids really love Curious George, and the fact is, Curious George really loves kids. So I can think of no other place that Curious George could be happier than a school. And can you imagine what Curious George's first day of school would be like? Oh man, I bet it's a ton of fun. Let's see what it was like in this book called Curious George, First Day of School by Margaret and H.A. Rays. Here we go. This is George. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. Today George was so excited he could barely eat his breakfast. "You have a big day ahead of you, George," said his friend, the man with the yellow hat. It was a big day for George. It was the first day of school, and he had been invited to be a special helper. George and his friend walked together to the schoolyard. Some of the children were nervous, but George could not wait for the fun to begin. In the classroom, George's friend introduced him to Mr. Apple. "Thank you for inviting George to school today," the man with the yellow hat said to the teacher. Then he waved goodbye. "Have a good day, George. I'll be back to pick you up after school." The children were excited to have a monkey in class. "George is going to be our special helper," Mr. Apple told them. Mr. Apple says, "Welcome to your first day of school." And what a helper he was. At story time, George held the book. At math time, the children could count on George. At recess, George made sure everyone had a ball and a well-balanced snack. After lunch, Mr. Apple got out the paints and brushes. George saw red, yellow, and blue paint. 3 colors were not very many. George was curious. Could he make more colors? First, George mixed red and blue to make purple. Next, George mixed red and yellow to make orange. Then George mixed yellow and blue to make green. Finally, George mixed all the colors to make a big mess. The children thought the mess was funny, but Mr. Apple did not. "Oh dear," he said, "we are going to need something to clean this up. Everyone please sit quietly while I look." George did not mean to make such a mess, and he certainly did not want to sit quietly. He wanted to help. It was his job, after all. George had an idea. In the hallway, George found a closet. In the closet, he found a bucket. In the bucket, he found just what he needed. George was on his way to the classroom when he heard somebody yell, "Stop! Stop! What are you doing with my mop?" The janitor ran after George. "Stop! Stop! No running in the halls!" The principal ran after the janitor. But George was going too fast to stop. He grabbed the doorway and swung inside. Sploosh! The bucket tipped, the mop dropped, and George slid across the floor. Now the mess was even bigger. Mr. Apple looked surprised. The principal frowned. The janitor just shook his head. And George, poor George, he felt terrible. Maybe he was not such a good helper after all. The children felt terrible too. They did not like to see George looking so sad. They thought he was a great helper. Now they wanted to help him. So the children all lent a hand and some feet. And before anyone knew it, the mess was gone. "That little monkey sure is helpful," the janitor said. "It looks like Mr. Apple has a whole class full of helpers," the principal added. At the end of the day, when George's friend arrived to pick him up, Mr. Apple said, "Thank you for all your help, George. We hope you come and help us again soon." The children cheered. They hoped George would come again too. George waved goodbye to his new friends. What a great day it had been. He could not wait to come back to school. Well, friends, I hope you enjoyed that story about George's first day of school. Hopefully your first day of school isn't quite so messy, but if it is, if everyone lends a hand to clean up, it is a light load and it goes very quickly. You should always help your janitors and your teachers and your principals to keep your school nice and tidy, because that will make everyone happy. All right, friends, thanks so much for reading this fantastic book with me. Bye.